agenda today, we have a special guest joining us, Dan Stork Roddick. Stork is the elder statesperson of all things Frisbee, shaping the early days of flying disc sports as a champion player, an organizer, and a driving force behind the growth of all Frisbee sports. He was an early star of the game of ultimate with college champion Rutgers University. And he's a winner of national and world championships in individual events, including disc golf, freestyle, and accuracy. Stork is one of the driving forces behind promoting and supporting all disc sports through his role as head of Whamo's sports marketing department from 1975 to 1996, ensuring sufficient financial support for the organizing bodies early in their existence. He was also instrumental in the international arena, not only as a disc missionary, but also as World Flying Disc Federation president from 1986 to 1992, and many, many other roles within the organization. He continues today in a role as director of special projects for the PDGA and record keeper and advisor to WFDF, and we've convinced him to get involved again as chair of a new commission we'll be setting up and talking about tomorrow. Stork has written numerous articles and books on disc sports, and he's credited with framing Ultimate's defining spirit of the game, philosophy, and culture, which has guided play since the late 1970s. He's been inducted into every Frisbee-related Hall of Fame that exists. Outside of his disc sports career, he served as a college lecturer in sociology and as a writer and consultant, having received a PhD in sociology from Rutgers University. And he is a longtime resident of Pasadena, birthplace of sun and all good things Frisbee. So with that, I wanted to have everybody give a warm welcome to Stork. And Stork, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, but after that introduction, I think I can only erode my reputation. Perhaps I should.
Good. Well, let's jump right into things. And why don't you tell people how you first got involved in Frisbee games and sports? Because you were playing with the Frisbee as a younger than most everybody in the room even today.
Well, that first picture that you showed of me reaching up to catch a Pipco flying saucer, that was that was just under 70 years ago, which is really hard to believe. And it so happens, because I'm a hoarder, that I still have a disc from that era. If you can see clearly, I took the time to spray racing stripes on the disc so it would go faster. I was always thinking performance, and of course wood burned my initials in the bottom so no one would steal it. My dad and I really started playing early there in Cumberland Valley, Pennsylvania, and for whatever reason also started in inventing games. I guess we took the message on the bottom of the Pluto platter pretty seriously to play, catch, and invent games, and that was a lot of what we did. Dad was an astronomer, and so the planets around the edge really moved this, and we played space games in the back. I would love to say that we said we were playing disc golf, but we didn't, even though Dad was a great ball golfer. We were playing space games and landed the disc at the various motherships around the backyard. And he was a motorcycle rider. We did motorcycle camping. It was the greatest thing to bring along. But we didn't really know of anybody else who was into it as much as we were. He had given it to me on my fifth Christmas, the Pipco, and it really wasn't until we went to the Seattle World's Fair in '62 that we saw a Whamo demonstration team, and Dad had joined them first, and he was throwing. And then he said, "Oh, if you think I'm good, you should see my little boy." And so then I came and we just had a tremendous time with them and shared a lot of things. And then they went away, and we didn't make any other contact until the World's Fair in Flushing Meadows. And by then we were better than the demo team, and had been playing a tremendous amount every evening, throwing trick catch and that kind of thing. So that was the start, and then and then it spiraled down into serious psychosis after that.
And how did they suck you into Ultimate at Rutgers?
Wow, it was we had been playing a lot of, I say almost every evening in junior high was Frisbee football in the backyard. And so a lot of the basic elements were already there, the throwing, the cutting, and all of that. And so when Kismet struck and I saw the ad for Rutgers Ultimate, the second year I was in grad school there, I played all my play for Rutgers was as a grad student. I like to say that the eligibility requirement was that you had to retain an interest in higher education. If you didn't have to be attending, but if you were interested, then you could put on a red shirt and play. And I went to Irv's dorm room, and hey, wow, electrodes. Let's go out in the courtyard and throw. And it was, oh my, this is going to be good. You're really tall. And a number of weeks later, we had the epic first intercollegiate game with Princeton, and it was a fantasy. It really was a tremendous fantasy. And unfortunately, the story of how I got my Stork nickname at that game is longer than the segment we have, but it's somewhere on the internet.
Awesome. So that first intercollegiate game was in 72. And you then finished grad school in around 76. And, the Whamo had set up its IFA group to sort of be a promotion arm or what have you. But talk about what the IFA was and sort of how did it morph into the Whamo sports department that you ran for so many years?
Dad and I became aware of IFA. And when I was in undergrad, I was in contact with Ed Hedrick, and he was sending me discs for Pennsylvania state championships and New York state championships, because I was teaching tennis at Chautauqua in New York State. And so I would run the New York State championships each summer. And so we knew about IFA. And then when we first saw Stancil Johnson's book that described so many things that we didn't know about, we were, I think the word is gobsmacked. I mean, there were things in there, the forehand / sidearm, date myself, we assumed that was a joke because there were a number of tongue-in-cheek things in the book. We tried it, obviously can't be done. And then it wasn't until years later that I went to my first IFT. Jimmy Scala and I get out of the car, and the first person we see throwing is Victor Malafronte, throwing his macho sidewinder. You could have knocked us over with a feather. I mean, we were just absolutely blown away. And so IFA was behind all of that from the late 60s, that Ed was driving it, mainly interested in guts. If you ever have seen the old IFA newsletters, there's a lot of kind of silly stuff in it and very few kind of facts. And that's why I had begun Flying Disc World magazine at Rutgers, because I thought it might be good to share techniques and know when event dates were coming and that kind of thing. Ed didn't love it. He called me, he said, "Flying Disc World, I don't know, it sounds like it's for airline pilots who have chiropractic licenses." I said, well, I think that's probably going to be the generic. Anyway, that was the beginning of a long discussion between Ed and myself.
And so with that discussion with Ed at Whamo, what led to you getting hired by Whamo, and how much flexibility did you have in designing what you were doing, and sort of at its peak, what was the budget of of your group, how many people were working there, what types of things were you covering? I mean, obviously, I think the Rose Bowl, for example.
Truth be told, I think Ed hired me mainly because he was kind of afraid of the potential competition, organizational competition. I mean, we had done AFDO. Jim Palmieri had done that. Ed had heard about the success of the CPI All-Star, which had no upper surface ridges and was outperforming the pro. We had run Octad. I had the magazine. But this was all just scrabbled together. I mean, the only reason we could publish Frisbee World, Flying Disc World magazine, was because we had the key to the duplicating room at the mental health center. And so he said, "Hey, Stork, why don't you come out and I'll have you be the director of the International Frisbee Association." And I'm ABD at Rutgers, and just getting ready to turn in the dissertation. I'm going, oh man, do we do this? And then I said, God, if I don't, I'm going to be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life and wonder how that was or would have been. So I said, yeah, I'll be able to finish this. And so we got in the Datsun that I had won and drove to San Gabriel and took the job. And in the beginning, it was a pretty short leash because Ed was a controlling person. But then he pretty quickly had his issues with Whamo management and said, well, if you don't do it the way I'm saying, then I'm quitting. And they said, see ya. To kind of everybody's surprise. And I said, hey, Ed, I'll go with you. I got to go back and do my dissertation anyway. He said, no, just stay. You're here already. You might as well stay, which he probably regretted at sometimes. And so after that, I was Mr. Frisbee to Whamo administration. Ed was gone, and man, I'm at Life O'Reilly. They're beginning to sell the G Series sports discs, because when I came, the regular at 97 cents retail was the biggest seller. And then Ed developed the beginning of the sports discs, which went into the sports market, and big money's coming in. And so they're going, wow, I guess we should get on this train and promote it. Ed started the World Championships. Let's make it bigger and better. We got our boy here. I'm saying, well, it shouldn't just be trick catch and everything. We should have all the events. We should have ultimate. We should have disc golf. We should have distance and MTA, and make it like a track and field thing, because I came from that background. My dad was track and field coach too. So I'm going crazy. I've got money for the magazine. I started out with just Joe Cahow on staff, and then all at once I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got regional directors. I've got the magazine coming out 6 times a year. We've got 20 regional events to qualify for the Rose Bowl. We've got international affiliates that are coming on and having champions and bringing them to the Rose Bowl. The World Junior Championship is going on. At its peak, it went to 2,000 schools and was always our pretty much easiest event to get sponsors for. We had Frosted Flakes. We had one year we had True Value Hardware and Frosted Flakes. That was a tough combo. Not as bad as the year that we had Toyota and Bud Light for the U.S. Open. That always, the drunk driving combo. But you ask about the dimension of things. The full year was occupied with with IFA meets, mainly qualifying. State meets got up to, I guess, 45 was the crest of the number of state meets. And the juniors, as I said, to 2000, and always finishing at a high profile venue. Name one, I mean, Disneyland and SeaWorld and Six Flags and all that. And then at that point, Kellogg's is interested, Wheaties is interested. It was hard to get into the schools at that time. And so to have Frisbee on the box, or to be able to deliver their logo discs into 2000 schools, was really attractive. And so, that's a $50,000 sponsorship. And all at once, I was just looking through the budget yesterday on U.S. Opens in particular. It was funny because they were really kind of skeptical about what we were doing, because there was always the group that said we should just be buying Saturday morning ads. This fellow's thing is pretty messy. And so I looked at it, and the budget for one of the U.S. Opens was $162,050. Income was $162,050. So that was about the dimension of it. And staff, the peak of staff probably was, a dozen inside. And then the key to doing the things we were doing were just how many people were regional directors and that kind of thing, who were enthusiasts, helping out and doing it for love. I mean, it's like AYSO, man. That doesn't run without all those heartbeats on the field,
And so what would be the peak year for the investment that Whamo made in your group?
Well, 82 was a crust year because Whamo changed management and had Kransco Industries come in. And so this now broke the DNA from Spud and Rich and the family run organization. And so it was a more, I don't want to say skeptical eye at the budget, but I mean, these are more traditional people coming from traditional background, and it worked out. I mean, it was okay. We made the transition. Our last real traditional year was 82, where we did the 3 across the country and then finished with a huge event at Rutgers, the 82 Rutgers Bowl. But then after that, we transitioned to US Opens. And that also, interestingly enough, was the transition between product specific events and open events, because that was a struggle for, oh man, 3, 4, 5 years of where management and aided and abetted by other former employees didn't want to make the shift, because hey, it's good to be king, and they felt safer. We don't want to make the lunch and then have other people eat it. Well, that's just the way sports grow. But in that, like 82, 83, that's when we did finally make the shift to say, okay, and you'll see it changed to, that's US Open Flying Disc Championships. And now the Whamo discs were simply competing with others, and now Innova was beginning to emerge, and Discraft and the others. And so it was a pretty lively marketplace at that point. But they didn't particularly want to make that leap because it's scary, and so, but we made it. And at that point, I mean, the US Opens were huge. I mean, they were 450 competitors, 10 days, and I mean, 7 events. I mean, the thing's a monster. You can imagine the venues and the staff. I mean, the staff was twice the size of the original Octet number of competitors. We had 40, 50 people on staff. And of course, the key was, and this is true of early WFCs in the Rose Bowl too, is that all of Whamo was behind it. The first WFC, every single employee had a job at WFC. I mean, we had every truck, we had all the printing department, we had everybody was working weekends. Everybody was in on it, and they were super enthusiastic about it. I mean, we had 50,000 people in the Rose Bowl. You know, I mean, what's not to be excited about? You know, and they loved the stars and the players and everything like that. So I often think when people draw comparisons between like World Disc Games, this is Tom Schott's operation. I mean, Tom was doing all of that up there out of his pocket. You know, I'm just pulling budget line items. You know, we need a truck, send a truck down. You know, I mean, so it was almost cheating. Ad campaigns, the people who placed the ads, they knew people, and so it was pretty easy to get television spots and radio. So it was really a fortunate situation, and I was in the bully pulpit. I was super lucky, and the biggest luck was to be able to work with people on the player side who I loved. I mean, who doesn't love Bill Wright and Dan Mangoni? And you know, that's just such a blessing to be able to work with your dear friends. That's doesn't get any better than that.
Cool. So what would you describe as the role you played in sort of the shift towards establishing disc sports organizations like UPA, PDGA, FPA, GPA, and then all the national federations that start getting developed with the likes of, I don't know, Sweden and 74 and others?
Well, on the front end of it, when someone took on the license for Frisbee brand products in their country, they would typically come to Whamo, and the business guys would do the talk, and every deal was kind of different because every market was different. But then one of the stops they had to make was come and sit in my office. And then the pitch was, well, you can't have it. You can't have it unless you essentially replicate IFA in your country. And that has to involve, because otherwise it's going to be a fad. If you just want, you know, one summer on Bondi, then you can do it that way, but then you're not our licensee. We want you to have the Australian Association, and we want you, the deliverables are, we want at a minimum for you to send your male and female champion to the Rose Bowl at a minimum. We'd love to have a bigger team. And so that was kind of the seed that got each of those started, that they were essentially forced into it. And most were happy to do it. Some were better prepared than others. Like Sweden got a really running start and pretty early kind of fit into their sports culture, and Svenska Frisbee Förbundet was one of the first to get governmental support and that sort of thing. Others were behind. You know how it is when you're when you're trying to bring along all of your national associations. Now they're all in such different situations. But I think at the peak, we had 15 countries coming to WFC. And that was really when we first started to have the first sit down meetings that say, you know, there ought to be a federation outside of IFA that represents the sport, the open sport. And that transition really took place. 82 was a watershed year because Kransko was changing gears in terms of how they wanted to support things. And I had to have the call with each of these. We had originally set up committees. When I first came in, I set up the Ultimate Committee and the Guts Committee. Guts people hadn't even agreed about how far apart they wanted to stand when they threw. They worked that out every year. So anyway, I said, we ought to codify that. Anyway, that each one of those committees was in place and got increasingly strong. Like that committee for Ultimate had the captains meeting on the East Coast. There was West Coast because there was a big. It was not unlike rap that there was East Coast and West Coast. There weren't any murders as far as I know. But anyway, there was some disagreement back and forth of which disc and the master versus the 165, et cetera, et cetera. But When 82 came, then I had to go more arm's length with them and say, okay, it's not going to be really that you're an IFA committee anymore. You're, FPA is FPA, and we will continue to provide you with sponsorship and support, but it's adolescence is over and you're off on your own, and that's better for everybody. It was a struggle because, you get used to getting help just like a kid does. And when that transition was made, I'm sure there was a lot of collective disappointment. He let us down, but then once they got traction and each one of those FPA and GPA and all of those got traction, then it was better. It was better for everybody. It was a tough transition, but a critical one for sure.
So UPA in '79, how did you get Tom Kennedy to take that on and formalize it on a quasi standalone basis?
That's a perfect example. I can't believe I didn't mention him as one of those bosom buddy things. Just having so many people in the infrastructure, Larry Schindels and when it was Eric Simon, and all of those. I mean, I'm sure it's that I called up Tom and said, "Hey, TK, now's the time, buddy. Uh, I'm here to provide basically anything you need, but you're the man. I mean, you're admired. I can't imagine you're going to get any pushback. Uh, the ship's ready to sail. You're the guy to sail it." And he was, a tremendous choice. Obviously, I mean, he breathed life into it, and I don't know that anybody could have done a better job at that juncture. And it was the same kind of communication with the guts people and the freestyle people were already up and going. I think Dave Marini at that point already had FPA up and going. Disc golf is another kind of an animal because Ed was the main shaker there, and so PDGA was doing its thing, and that was great. That was perfect. The one thing that I tried to do through those years and a good many later, 10, 15 later, I tried to keep the two operations in perfect sync. That is the WFDF committee, let's say for Ultimate, we took turns rubber stamping the rules. I really wanted to avoid there being arguments between the two on rules or standards, and so I was always ready to give way to whatever the stronger effort was. If the stronger effort was at PDGA, then great. The WFDF committee will rubber stamp those disc approvals and that kind of thing. If the stronger effort was on the IFA or Whamo side, then great. We would carry the burden. Like for a number of years, we printed the rules for WFDF because we had the wherewithal. And people were always generous enough. I can't say enough about people. I mean, we look back on it and go, conflict of interest. Oh my God, Doge was nothing. This here's Roddick running things. He's getting paid by Whamo, and we expect him to be an independent arbiter of this. I mean, people were wonderfully generous to me through my whole career, and hopefully I didn't let them down. I mean, that was my goal, I guess.
And so what led to the establishment of WFDF, which university we're celebrating 40 years this summer?
That was it was like getting a vintage motorcycle started. If you've ever had one, it's like push, push. We had probably maybe 4 or 5 preliminary gatherings of interested people. One was at Santa Barbara. One was part of an ultimate championship in New Orleans. Those preliminary gatherings at WFCs where the vision was always the same. We need to have an independent organization that will represent all of the elements of play. and it'll fit into the world stage of sport. And it it I guess that that meeting in New Orleans probably set the stage best. But then I found this looking yesterday. I must have won a bet from a Canadian, but this is the shirt from Helsingborg. And that Helsingborg meeting where I shared the picture of us sitting around barefooted in that semicircle, that was really the formal beginning. And Charlie stepped up, again, a well-respected person, and we thought it was important to get the leadership out of North America, because otherwise it would just be a continuation of we're telling people what to do. And that was perfect. Charlie did a great start, and then we had Johan Lindgren, who was in there for years, and Juha Ilavara, and it kind of took off on its own. But if you looked at some of those notes that I showed you about the early meetings, it's like the Continental Congresses in the United States. When you look at the history, you think it went smoothly, but there were fits and spurts for sure. And I was through Whamo supporting it separately, again, arm's length. And we had other people supporting. People were selling discs. We had made the transition to Discraft by then, and I know Jim Kenner and his company were supporting it mainly with plastic, and we were doing the same thing. But fortunately, the appetite for plastic was high, and so giving people specially imprinted discs and that kind of thing for events and their organizations was effective, because it was coin of the realm and people could quickly monetize it.
Cool. So 2 last questions and I'll let you go here, but shifting gears a bit. You're often described as the author of the Spirit of the Game clause. So how did that come about? I mean, sort of what went into that process?
I was just looking up a thread this morning on that people were asking about it, and man, it's amazing how bad my memory is about the sequence of things. But essentially, we're talking around 78, and that is that this 7th edition was the first to have that language in it. The general concept of fair play was there, but Irv Kalb and TK and I met in some seedy motel, might have been where TK was living, I don't know, in Santa Barbara, and were doing essentially it was that we were going to go through and clean up language in the 6th edition, because these were still coming out as from the ultimate commit rules committee of IFA. And in the process of doing that, we were saying, there's a lot of people getting interested in it. And if we want to protect this kind of amorphous thought that we have of this game being special in that way, we better get the language down. And it was kind of the end of the day. And they said, okay, Stork, why don't you work on that this evening? And then we'll get together again tomorrow morning and see how it goes. And so I took that on. And when I came back the next day, I gave them the sketch of that imagery that was in my mind. And that language appeared in this set of rules. And then in the 8th, there was a preface that also introduced it, but then the same language of Spirit of Game was in the 8th. And after that, I don't think it changed too much. It is worthy to note. I mean, somehow when people think about that, they think, oh, wow, Flower Child, and it was all love and kisses in the early going. It wasn't all love and kisses in the early going. It was super competitive. And the first game, Dave Lawant was wearing a striped shirt. I mean, we had a referee out there. I don't know if he made any calls or anything, but if you see those pictures, Dave's out there. He's got a whistle and he's running around. I guess we wanted to make it look official or something. I don't think he appeared again after that. but it wasn't that we were against uh, that kind of thing. But I think everybody was feeling that the misunderstandings, if there were, should be worked out between the players, and that language essentially was designed to formalize that for new people as they came in, because we we were starting to get mainstream athletes who were coming in and going, "What the hell?" You know, it's you win how you win, right? We go, well, no, not exactly. It's not exactly like that.
Thank you. So let's wrap up and let me ask you the question. So here you are, you're 1985 Stork self, and you're looking at WFDF getting going, and you have put your fingerprint all over what's going on in North America, all over the world. So what did you think was going to happen in the following 40 years? And what do you think about it today? Do you like it? Do you wish things were different? Just let us know.
Well, the harder question is, I guess, trying to remember what I thought was going to happen, because it's hard to it's hard to remember who you were. I the interesting challenge for me was that I was always very interested in the informal parts of the game and the creative parts of the game, and making new things happen with this fantastic object. And yet I was the number one proponent of codification. you know why don't we just decide the guts rule? We'll just see what it feels right. We'll just walk back a few steps, and then we'll play guts. Well, I'm the guy who said, no, you should pick the number of meters, and and so I was doing both those things. I guess that I assumed that I assumed that we would get broader popularity. I thought that it would be a recreational and sports object that would be loved and practiced by virtually everyone. Um, I I guess I assumed that there would eventually be professional play, although I had already seen struggling efforts of, like pro volleyball thought they were going to succeed, pro box lacrosse thought they were going to succeed. I mean, it's not that easy. And so probably my behind the curtain story, when people said, okay, Stork, when are we going to be in the Olympics? Um, I guess my answer always was, well, let's just build a wonderful sport. And if the Olympics comes to us and wants us to be in, then we'll do it. But I don't want to be chasing after them, you know. And so, and then I ended up chasing after them, of course. But um, I guess I didn't know. My hope was that it would make people healthy and happy. That was my biggest hope, and I hope that it would be able to continue. I will tell you one of my biggest disappointments, and that is that recreational back and forth disc play is almost dead globally. I mean, I was just came back from from Crystal Cove, and I did not see one pair of people just tossing it back and forth. The last time I was in Australia, Bondi Beach, did not see a single person throwing back and forth. I saw some people on the grass working on their ultimate cuts, you know, but recreationally, I would have expected that people would have seen tipping and delaying and leaping catches, and that it would have basically eliminated the the Nerf football from the beach. But for reasons that escape me, that recreational play hasn't thrived. That being said, our organizational play is huge. I mean, when you look at the number of ultimate events and disc golf events on a particular week, there, I'm sure there are more discs in flight at this instant than there have ever been in history. I mean, all that recreational play was small change in comparison to what's going on now. But just people informally throwing, uh, I'm I'm disappointed that they don't have one in their trunk and that they're doing that just on their own. But can't have everything. I guess.
Well, maybe we should start a sport for all commission and have some focus on the recreational and fun side of things. What do you think, Stork?
I, I'm sorry, there was background noise there, and I didn't hear your question clearly.
If someone could mute, please. So my question is, what do you think? Maybe we should start a WFDF Sport for All Commission to put a little focus back on the less formal, less competitive and fun aspects of the game?
Um, I I do believe that the object still has a magical appeal, particularly to young people. I mean, look at a video of one of Rob's school shows. Now, not everybody can throw it into the basket from the full length of the court, but they're still entranced with it, and they're a whole new generation that they haven't necessarily seen it. So, and let's be frank, the right charismatic person can make anything go in a junior high. I mean, you can have a chess squad, a juggling team, a unicycle. I mean, if you got the right energetic person, kids want something to do. And frankly, there's never been a time in human history that we need something for kids that they do that is physical and outdoor and creative, because the default, we know what it is, and that is that left to their own devices, um, that's all they'll do. And so I think we owe it to our younger generation to show them how much fun this can be, and to make it as accessible and as customizable to whatever they need. You don't need to play uh, ultimate to all of the rules. You just need, 10 people who want to split up and throw it back and forth in the park. I mean, that's the joy of it. So yeah, I think it is an important thing, and probably something that has been neglected in our drive to formalize, which I take some blame for.
Well, I think the one thing which I can say is if I were to ask everyone in this room whether a big part of the reason why they are drawn to disc sports, they would all answer that it's the flight of the disc, watching it, playing against the wind. And I mean, that's still fascinating. I mean, to me, I you know, I'm catching up, but I'm still a little bit younger than you, but I still find that to be the thing that keeps me entranced. And so I think on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank you for taking your time today to give us a little history. It's something that I think a lot of people don't hear very often. And I think it's useful just to be able to benefit from your perspective on things. And so, Stork, for everything you've done for Frisbee sports, Frisbee games, Frisbee fun, really on behalf of everybody, want to thank you. And again, thanks for taking the time today, and happy 40th to WFDF, which I think you probably deserve a lot of credit for. So appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. Thanks so much for asking me. I appreciate it. And it's nice to be in touch with everybody. And I'm blown away by all the things that y'all are doing now. It's fantastic.
Very good. Thank you, Stork. Yeah, you talk about the number of countries that you had together. I think we'll be approving our member nation number 118 tomorrow.
Wow. Wow. That's mind blowing. I mean, and it's worth noting that in each one of those countries, it is in many of them, it's a fresh start opportunity.
Yes.
And that I can remember Joe and I in Australia, we did a demo for an Aboriginal group who had never seen it fly. Oh my God. that was an unbelievable opportunity. And you'll keep getting that. You'll keep getting that. And we should never forget just how magical what we have is.
Thank you very much, Stork. All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.